Leave of absence, depending on.
I'm an observer, sorry.
Oh, right, okay, sorry.
We don't have to call.
Conflicts of interest,
No.
no conflicts of interest. Just back to my agenda. Minutes, previous minutes.
I'm happy to move that, Mr. Chair.
So thank you. Councillor Hayes, seconder, Councillor Daniels. All those in favour? Carried, unanimous. Okay, business arising out of minutes. No business arising. No petitions.
Actually, Chair, could I just go back to the flying fox? Whether Daniel has any further update around what's happening with flying foxes in Drinker?
Sure, thank you through the chair. We did send out a media release last week giving a slight update. Unfortunately, we're hamstrung at this stage by a number of issues, but while I've got one of our senior mates, Carol, here as well, I'm going to pass it over to them and see if there's any update they can provide around our operational stuff. So we are, a couple of the issues are around the weather, so the weather has Tropical Cyclone Debbie's pushed the flying fox inland, not just the initial colony that we were trying to disperse, but many other colonies have come from the coast, and we're now communicating with the Department of Environment and Heritage Protection to look at our next future dispersal opportunities. So I'll pass over to them in case they've got any extra updates around that.
Yes, I do actually. So I've been communicating with EHP and with our knowledgeable person yesterday and today, and we've started the approval process to go forward with dispersal. We have a tentative start date for Tuesday the 18th. That's obviously pending weather and the final approvals from our knowledgeable person. So we put together a notification for the community and for EHP this morning. So we're just pending the visit from the knowledgeable person now. That should be over the weekend, and then all going well, we should be set to disperse on Tuesday morning. With the last dispersal, we did have an issue where we had a date and everyone arrived and we were good to go, and then it rained, so got pushed back a couple of days and something similar could happen again. But all going well. The dispersal will start next week.
Great, thank you.
So the Chair, Jamie, what actually is involved? Had someone asked me today what's actually involved in actually dispersing the flying foxes?
Yep, so for a start, all councils have an as of right authority in regards to flying foxes, but you have that applies, there's a map of areas that applies to where you can disperse without a permit. So Dringa is covered by that, but we still have to do notification to EHP that we're planning on doing as of right activities. And part of that notification is we are required to have a knowledgeable person assess the flying foxes, and EHP will assess them as well to ensure that we're meeting code of practice before we disperse, so we're not going to harm any young or anything like that, because if there's young that are dependent, they can't fly away, so chase all the adults away and then the babies will die. So we're not allowed to do that, obviously. So once we have the as of right notification approved, we're required to have our knowledgeable person on site the entire time through dispersal, and then we contract the actual dispersal out. We're currently using revegetation contractors. We've used them a couple of times and they've been quite good. And our knowledgeable person is actually employed by revegetation contractors, so all works quite smoothly in that regard and speeds the whole process up a little bit. So they come in, dispersals normally start in the evening when the flyout occurs. Basically, you can't do anything during the day. You've got to wait for them to fly out, and that's when you start all the deterrents to keep them away. And that goes for a couple of hours when they fly out to make sure they all leave, and then you have a few hours quiet during the night, and then usually about 3 AM in the morning when they're going to start returning to the roost, the same disturbances that are done, smoke, lights, loud noises, that type of thing, so that they don't actually want to come back and they go, oh, this isn't, I'm not going to go back here and sleep for the day, we can't sleep here, and then they move on. And generally speaking, depending on the roost, it'll either take 1 to 2 days or it'll take 4 to 5 days. It just depends on how cemented the roost is. But with the ones that we have in Druga at the moment, because they're not actually from there and that's not their set roost, we're anticipating it'll be a 1 to 2 night process to disperse them again.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Appreciate that, and I'm sure for our live streamers that'll be probably the first real explanation of actually what happens, when they talk about it. And certainly councillors that aren't smart enough to answer their questions too, Jamie, so I'll be well informed now, so thank you for that. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, any other business arising? Okay, we'll move on to Daniel with the committee recommendation notes. Did you introduce that or I go through this one?
No.
Sorry.
This is a report.
Yeah, move into the reports.
Through the chair, so this report is an update on Fernleys. I'm not going to have a go at pronouncing the scientific names, but essentially the Mother of Millions and the sword pair form part of this report. I'll pass it over to Jamie as well, and she's brought some colleagues from Chirp to go through the report and the findings as well. So you will also notice that this was prepared for council in August last year, so we'll get a good update on where we're at this stage.
Thank you, Daniel. So council contracted CHERP, the Central Highlands Regional Resources Use Planning Cooperative, to conduct and coordinate pest management, in particular plants, in the Fernleys Camping and Water Reserve, which is a Brigalow community. So we've got some major issues there with sword pair and Mother of Millions, as you would have seen in the report. So we have Claire Rogers and Stacey Heidenreich from CHERP here this morning with a bit of a presentation to update you as to where the control is up to. So I'll hand over to you, ladies.
So this is just a couple of photos of the weeds that we're actually dealing with here, the Mother of Millions and sword pear, which most of you will be familiar with. The sword pear, as you can see there, is quite in a large and dense population, especially in the southeastern corner of the reserve. And quite often gets confused with the Harrisia cactus, which is a declared pest under the Biosecurity Act. So the Harrisia, as you'll see there, is that photo is looking down into the grass and is laying on the ground. Is more of a creeper, and the stem has quite a different shape to the sword pear on your left, for most of you, that has more of a three-sided shape to it, and the spines are on the edges of those sides. So there is quite a difference in how the plants behave. The sword pear can hold itself up to a certain height and then proceed to climb into trees, where Harrisia needs support for most of its climbing. So the sword pear is definitely much more prominent in the reserve and definitely much more of a threat in that particular community. So CHERP performed a survey of these points across the reserve to identify the spread of Mother of Millions and sword pear. The lighter image you'll see behind that is a drone survey which was conducted before the ground survey was done to try and identify the sword pear and Mother of Millions distribution throughout the Brigalow. It wasn't overly successful due to the tree cover being very dense, and the quality of image was not enough to see all of the infestation. You can see some when you zoom in and out on a mapping program, but not enough to be able to identify it well. So we continued with the ground survey along those points. These ones here, the pink points are the Mother of Millions, which we found, and the blue is the sword pear. The density of plants were definitely in that southeastern corner for the sword pear, and the age of those plants down there is much, they're very old compared to as you get closer to the highway. The density of them in there is yeah, it's incredible. You kind of need to see it to believe it, and the photos do it some justice, but yeah, it is amazing to see with the eye. And as you go towards the highway, those plants do get much younger and much more, yeah, dispersed, and you can walk through them quite easily. On the other side of the highway, on the western side, there was no plants found, neither Mother Moons nor Sword Peg, in that smaller patch on the other side of the highway. Whilst there is some in the property next door that we can see, there is none in what we classify as the reserve there. And I'll pass to Claire to do the control program for you.
So at the completion of the survey, we had an additional commission from council to undertake a control program. So with the funding with that, the council asked us to prioritise in that purple area on the map, and that's largely 100 metres inside the boundary and a strip along the creek, along Sandhurst Creek, of about 100 metres. So one of the other components of it was to work with the landholders around to, I guess, to let them know that council was doing the work, certainly, and also to get some support and so on with respect to it. So Hugo Spooner is to the north, and he was able to do some spraying immediately upon the completion of ours. He used the same spray contractor. Gummaroo, which is to the east of the reserve, they basically work with Sword Peg continuously. I think it depends a bit on who they've got working there at the time and so on, but they're basically out of most of the time. I don't think there's much Mother of Millions there. Mother of Millions appears to be to the north, and so on the Railway Reserve and in the Steelwinds Reserve across the highway from Fernlees. At the completion of the program, we waited for a while to get some impact. It takes us up to about 8 months for these plants to show the impact of control programs. So, we were a bit lucky in that it was a wet spring, winter and spring. They don't like being, or I should say they're more resilient to spray when they've been, if they're water stressed. And that's fairly common with most weeds, but we were fortunate in having a wet winter and spring. So the one on the left is a clump that one of the council rangers and our spray controller burnt, and they got a very good kill. They didn't do many like that. There was a few clumps, and they concentrated on areas that were relatively out in the open, so that they could deal with it effectively, and that seems to have provided a good kill. The one on the right has been treated with either Access and Diesel or Grazon brush off and water. So they used a couple of different treatments on them. This is the Mother of Millions before the treatment. On the northern end, there's a clump there of many square metres, many tens of square metres, I suppose it is. And that was what it looked like back in July when the survey was done. And this is it in January. We went back, didn't we? The photo on the right is the same clump. It's taken from a slightly different angle, but if you see, there's some little blackish looking things in that dead little stuff there, the dead flowers. That sword pair behind it, which was also showing signs of impact. And the one on the left they just look weird, and I think that they're on their way to death, or at least affected. A fresh Mother of Millions plant looks quite, what would you say, quite abundant. Whereas these little guys looked as if they were just clinging on, that the leaves were short and held in very close to the stem, and all the bottom was gone. I don't know whether they're dead, but we'll go back shortly and have another look. This is why we do it. There's some wonderful biodiversity values on the reserve. It's a lovely patch of timber. This little creek is up in the northern corner where most of the Mother of Millions is actually, and it was running the day that you were there doing the survey. And the other photo is a Denhamia, which was growing there when we went back to have a look at the impact that was growing there with all that gorgeous fruit on it. So it's a lovely little patch of the region, and we're starting to have an impact on it. Thank you.
Does council have any questions about the update?
Looks like it was very successful, though.
So can I just say, was Hugo quite happy with the progress of how it was going?
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that the program has allowed Hugo to improve his relationship with council to a considerable degree. I mean, he told me that he'd lost 90 head of cattle over the years with this, and as his business model is about bringing cattle on his place, he doesn't actually own cattle himself, so he brings cattle on. They're never used to it, whereas cattle that live with Mother of Millions get used to it. But yeah, there is a lot of Mother of Millions along the railway line and into the Steel Wings Reserve. That obviously wasn't part of what we were doing, but we did go out there and have a look and see what was there, just so that we could get an idea of how contained the issue is on the reserve.
Through the chair, how did the mealybug go?
It's a bit ordinary actually. It's not the mealybug that's there. We couldn't really see any impact.
But it's only on the tree pair from what we could see.
Yeah, and it's dealing with the tree pair quite successfully. But I did, in a conversation I had with Hugo just a few days ago, there's a mealybug down at Westwood and Gogango in that infestation down there that's having a much better impact. Thanks, Scott. Apparently, it affects the plant in a very different way. Now, I only had this conversation with Hugo a couple of days ago, and I'll try and chase that up. But with I did have a couple of conversations with Rocky Regional Council about it, but they were unaware of a biological control agent, because I've read elsewhere where it was successful down there. So we'll go back and do some more hunting around there. The other thing that I did want to say is that because of the time lapse to actually see whether the spray has worked, because it takes up to about 8 months, we'll go back around the end of May and have another look and actually go on the survey lines and see what the impact has been there, and also in that southeast corner that we're most concerned about. I was there a few days ago and it looked pretty good. It looked as though most of the plants were affected. But by the end of May, we should be able to see a really good impact.
Okay, great. Thank you. Just another question about future management. This one for Jamie. Did we end up getting the Green Army funding or the Green Army application?
Not that we're aware of.
Okay.
We are doing further work in the reserve though. We've organised for the tracks to be graded in there to allow more access. And we are looking at doing more control in there before the end of financial year, and also with the management plan, you'll be aware it's a 3-year plan. So obviously, new financial year, we're hoping with the budget to have funds to continue the program on over 3 years, and yeah. hopefully the end result will be a clean reserve.
Okay, that's great, thank you.
Through the chair, while we've got Claire and Stacey here, we're allowed to ask about the hymen acne in the river.
Yeah, good question.
Yeah, go for it.
So that sounds like, yeah, go for it, we're not going to do anything about it. Look, I mean, obviously it's been reported to, I suppose, the council and to BNRM, I suppose, and others. I mean, I suppose, the first part of it is just, what, it might be out of ignorance, but I mean, what is the process there? I mean, I'm well aware of the danger of hymen acne in watercourses. How should we be dealing with that, or should we be doing something with that?
Well, the first thing I'd say is it's an interesting jurisdictional area.
Yes, yeah.
And the second thing is that yes, you can spray it, and yes, it's relatively effective. But I guess the overall success will be eradicating it from those areas where it comes out of to get into the river. Because of the fluctuating levels of the river, I don't know, but I'm assuming that there's a breeding ground of it somewhere between the town and the dam, that as the water is released from the river for irrigation, it floods into, brings some out, that sits in the river while the river's fairly still, breeds there, and then every time that water is released and goes back into those areas, that would be where I would be looking to undertake the control.
So jurisdictionally then, I mean, well, good sense would say, okay, I think it's located upstream of the Selma Weir, and I think 2PH Farms will be dealing with some of it up there. Then jurisdictionally, what would be the way we would tackle that and address it? I mean,
So we have done a joint control with Biosecurity Queensland. They did do a bit of a project on control along the river. They brought boats in. They utilised some of the Green Army fellows that were here on another project as well, and did a bit of a program on it. Jurisdictionally wise, it's not actually councils because it's a waterway. So the joint programs basically are the way to go that we can help with what's in the river. But yeah, approaching the landholders that are beside the river, and as Claire was saying, upstream and that, and you said with 2PH and that, is probably going to have a better effect from council's point of view because we can stop it getting in there and then breeding and going downstream. Obviously, it's in there, but if we don't control it outside of the river, it's just going to, doesn't matter how many times we spray the river, it's still going to keep feeding in there. We need to get rid of where it's
in
coming
terms
from.
of where it is there in the Botanic Gardens, is that our responsibility to spray it there? Or if we,
If it's in the actual gardens, yes, but in the actual waterway, no. The water course itself is not ours, but as I said, we've been working jointly with Biosecurity to do control on it, just from the point of view that it does need to be controlled, regardless of whose it is. We're not going to sit here and go, oh, that's not our issue. We're more than willing to help with it.
it's just that obviously that graping patch that sits there in plain view of everyone crossing across the bridge, it just sort of is is it just a recognition of the jurisdictional problem we have, or, is someone going to do something about it? I guess that's the
I'd have to have a look at the work that Biosecurity did to see whether they actually did any control on that particular patch. I haven't seen the mapping on that, so I really couldn't comment which areas they have sprayed, but they definitely did do work along that course there. At the end of the day, if that piece hasn't been controlled, there's certainly scope that we can approach Biosecurity or DNRM and go, okay, look, it may be your water course, but we're willing to take these steps to work towards it. But yeah, for a start, I need to review what Biosecurity have already done control on.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Claire, is there any other learnings out of this about cooperation between local government, yourselves, others, where there's examples where you could probably do more of it, or in other places?
Okay. The Willows is another example of where we've undertaken a similar sort of a program, although we weren't working on council work, on council land, council has been working there. We've run into some issues out there because of, you know, it's not as contained on the reserve, I guess, and working with the landholders we found it really, really hard to engage the landholders to do the work, and that's not for them to actually do the work. We were happy to use contractors to do the work, but yeah.
I think the financial, asking of the landholders at the moment, for that area, especially because they've been dealing with the weed for such a long time, and they do get no cost benefit out of dealing with the weed, is a big ask. They do appreciate that something is happening and that it's happening on council land as well as on their own private land, and that there is state and funding going towards it. But yeah, for some of them, it's just it's a battle they've been fighting for a long time, and yeah, they're all sort of the directly surrounding ones are involved, but at different levels due to their financial restrictions.
But I think it is a good model to work with, and I think one of the things that I found out that I was surprised about was the length of the history that's associated with it, and that doesn't mean that, you know, I'm not trying to say that they've been banging on to council forever about it. It's not about that, but how long the problem has been there, how I guess the things that have been done, and the things that could have been done, and so on. And it's I'd hate to say at sea the Fernleas one fall over at this stage, because we haven't done, I don't think we've done really nearly enough, and particularly when it's contained, when there's a huge amount of both of the weeds on that council land that the landholders can't really address. And I guess that's the same at the Willows. But yeah, the impact of the mother of millions, of course, is high because of its toxicity.
Yeah, I definitely think that the approach of working together with the landholders and with biosecurity and with Green Army and council and as many stakeholders as we can get involved that are related to these projects is definitely the way to go. Because as Claire just said, with the Fernleas Reserve, the landholders can do only so much, but they're going to be constantly trying to push it back into the reserve while we're not doing our bit. And the same thing applies to the Willows. We can do as much control as we like, but the person next door is not. We're constantly going to be trying to push theirs out, and there's not that education in the community. Just their control methods aren't as effective as they could be, which is where biosecurity's become involved out there. They've done trials on the control methods and that type of thing. So there's all different levels of assistance and working together there that are quite beneficial to the projects, particularly where biosecurity are doing the trials and that sort of thing for us, because at the end of the day, if they can find a cheaper, more effective solution for the landholders, they're going to be more likely to get on board with these things. So.
Through the chair, where there's biological controls, and I know Claire was saying that they're not active right now in the Fernleas Reserve, but I guess I've always had this thought around if we've got active biological controls in some of the weeds on our land, we may be able to provide access to landholders to those so that they can then take them to their properties.
Yes, so we currently do that. We utilise the UU moth in the Parkinsonia, and we've also got the rust in the Parthenium. And when we have the UU moth, we obtain that from biosecurity. And normally there's always landholders as well, but we get a certain amount in for them and distribute them to the people that have got Parkinsonia that are willing to do these controls on their property. And the same with the Parthenium rust and that type of thing as well. Susie, on numerous occasions, she'll be going and she'll get rust from Parthenium and take it over to another patch of ours or another patch of someone else's so that it can spread. So Unfortunately, we don't have mass amounts of biocontrol, but what we do have, we're more than happy to share with the landholders that are interested, so.
That's great news, thank you.
Okay, no further questions?
Just in regards to, are we happy that we, I suppose, the opportunity for us to upgrade our pest management plan, and that particularly on our spaces, you know, on our stockwoods or reserves that we manage, we up to scratch with all that? I mean, this thing with Hugo was surprising that it got away as much as it had. I mean, we worked with him in the 90s, you know, reintroduction of those little wallabies and stuff, and the whole process we have working with him, and it just seems that they got toxic for some reason. I don't know why. But are we happy that we're catching the others? Is there others? Is our plan sturdy enough that we're not going to see others fall through
Yep,
the cracks?
We do have a current area pest management plan, which is in the process of being upgraded. With the new Biosecurity Act that came through, council's required to have a community biosecurity plan. So that's in the draft stages of consultation at the moment. That's not just council's plan, we're getting submissions from the community saying what their problems are in their areas, and then categorising what the priorities are, what the risks are, that type of thing, and that will all go into that plan, which will then be presented to council to review and either adopt or make the necessary changes. As far as the Fernlands Reserve, why control hasn't been done in the past, I can't really comment on what the oversight was there, how it got to the point that it is. Like from the photos you've seen, you can also see it's quite extensive, the problem. We would certainly hope that there's no other areas that have slipped through our plan like that. Anything else that we're aware of like that is certainly listed in our draft plans, in our current plans, and we've got numerous other projects happening as well other than the Fernlands Reserve, obviously. But I suppose at the end of the day, a lot of it comes back to communication from the public as well. If we're not aware that they're having a problem with a weed, then it's not something that we can help them control either, which was the whole sort of point of having the consultation, the public consultation on the biosecurity plan, so that they can put forward what they're having issues with. Because even though it may not be an issue for us on our land, they may be having major issues with it on their land. And as far as the Biosecurity Act is concerned, council does have some authority in regards to landholders not meeting their obligations. So we've already had a couple of people come forward at our rural service group meetings and say, well, look, I've been working so hard on this and this on my property, but I'm constantly pushing out from the neighbours because they won't meet their obligations. And yes, it's not on council land, but it's still something that we can help those landholders with. So all those things get taken into account as well.
Through the chair, if I can add some comments to Jamie's there to answer your question, Councillor Bell, as well. From the discussions and advice that I've had with McCullough and other staff, I think we're confident that we're in a much more comfortable place than we have been in the past. The ability, and this is a testament to the engagement that the staff have been doing to gather that best practice information. We are far more confident that our position now is much more comprehensive than we have been in the past.
Good. Yeah, no, it's just a matter of resources or something. We just need to make it better because it's a freaking huge issue. Got to keep on top of it. And I think as Kerry said, like if you're not strategic about it, and that's what Claire's saying, you don't start at the bloody source, work down the river or right down the hill or wherever it is. Which we did many years ago, Bogan with bloody rubber line or whatever, whatever else you might be. Unless you start at that and have a really good strategy about it, you're never going to win the race. It's just, I thought we were going to win the race on all the stuff anyway. It's here and it's here to stay. We've just got to manage it. But yeah, I think it's just about making sure we've got that strategy right. So we are not just fighting fires in little places and like the river now. If you went out and sprayed that stuff, Kerry, but you're not killing the source. It's coming back and isn't what you do, isn't it, Claire? That's not a problem. You've got to keep getting to the source as much as you can.
To add again, I know we've recently given some information around, and approximately 1,400 hours of pest spraying is done by our rangers across any year, and that's unfortunately from a resourcing perspective just not enough to keep up with what's happening in the area. So the resourcing issues are becoming more clear as we do more of this engagement. I mean, as we stand, our current resources are being maxed out and we're still not able to sort of keep on top of what the pests are.
Yeah, because the bio stuff's not working, is it?
Not as good as we'd like it to.
That's for you.
Bio controls work also. Yeah. We've got Ralston, we've got the Zygogramma beetle, we've got the stem borer, we've got the rust. It's a multi-pronged attack on the pathogen. It's all happening. Jamie, I know we don't see you that often, so while you're in the hot seat, the biosecurity plan submissions that we saw from the community, did we get many?
We didn't get as many as we hoped, no. We did actually get more after the rural service group meetings that we held not too long ago. In the initial consultation period, we basically only received submissions saying the obvious things like wild dogs, pigs, that type of thing. After we had the rural service group meetings and spoke to the landholders and got a bit more information out there about it, we did actually get some useful submissions, which was really good. So, yeah, still not as many as we hoped.
It would be hard to develop a plan that's done for community consultation if we haven't got much.
Yeah, if the landholders aren't willing to provide that input, it does make it harder, but obviously we have sheriff to advise us as well, and biosecurity have been involved in the writing of which pests are priorities and the whole plan itself really, but all that prioritisation of what's an issue they've been involved in as well, so ideally more information from the landholders would be great, but we do have the external agencies to advise us as well on that. So. Thank you.
Okay, and my apologies for jumping the community consultation minutes, so going back to those. We have a,
So we just need to have those moved.
move please.
Councillor, do you have any questions?
Councillor Goodwin Smith, seconder, Councillor Bell, all those in favour? Carried unanimous. Now moving on to community grants program, round one.
Thank you, Claire and Stacey.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Through the chair, councillors, you'll see the attached report for the community grants program round one. So the community grants committee met earlier and prepared this table of the applicants and successful applicants here. So unless council has any questions about the report or any of the specific applications, we're asking the report that council approve and move these applications for the first round of the funding program.
Just a comment, as someone that sat on the panel for the second time out, how fantastic it is to see some of these projects getting funded, and can I also say, you'll note there that we had 38 grant applications and 22 were successful, so we were able to fund a whole lot more than last round, which was very much oversubscribed, but that is largely due to the funding, the Works of Queensland funding that we received. So that took a whole lot of project applications out of this round because they were funded through that other mechanism for funding. But as you can see, a great suite of projects are going to be funded from right across the Central Highlands. So yeah, it was really exciting for us as a panel to see so many great projects get funded.
Can I ask for just a little explanation on the state school one, the kitchen? I mean, I didn't know whether we've got exclusions in our projects, our place, in our submission process in regards to who's eligible and who's not eligible. But schools are one area I've always been worried about.
Was that the Ralston one?
No.
No,
There's some school kitchens.
Just Ralston and
okay, but the PNC, I can tell you, the Ralston State School PNC, that is a shared, that's going to be a shared resource. So PNC put the funding application in, so that shade zone will be shared between the Ralston Community Oval, Beasley Park, the Ralston Road Incorporated Group there. So that would be a shared resource, the shade sale, even though the PNC put it in. The Emerald
State School PNC Association Community Kitchen.
Community Kitchen, all I can say is that that definitely fitted the criteria, and it casts a very watchful eye over whether things are in or out.
I just wonder what a community kitchen is.
Yeah, from memory, it relates to
P&C rather than school, isn't it?
Yes, it is more of a P&C thing, I believe. But I probably shouldn't comment because I haven't really got all the specifics in front of me. I do have a vague recollection of that one, but,
I'm not on the committee.
I'm just trying to see it there.
I guess a question.
Which one is it, Paul? I can't even see it
It's
there.
the top one. So
Oh, on the second
Second
page,
page,
yeah. Community kitchen, that's I'm pretty sure from memory it is a shared space, once again, a little bit like, the applications come through from the school P&C, but that is a shared kitchen with other community groups. All the details I sort of just can't remember off the top of my head, but, then it would be up to the drivers to, suffice to say.
Did you, though, you're
Yeah,
comfortable?
yeah, all those ones that are there, we would be comfortable with for sure, but, just who those community groups are that use it, I just can't run off the top of my head, so.
through the chair, we can get that information back to you, councillor.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing what it's saying.
Yes, through the chair, I'd be interested to know what the criteria is that you assess, or the group assesses the grant applicants on.
We might need to get Annette to forward the guidelines,
Thank you.
and they should be on the website, just go to community grants. But the criteria for assessment, she might just forward you for your interest as well.
So there's a resolution,
Mr Chair, I am happy to move it.
moved councillor Wiggins-Smith, seconded councillor Daniels. All those in favour? Carried unanimous.
To you, Mr Chair, I'd really like to see Garth's comment yesterday, the media strategy about contacting some of those groups and saying how much they appreciate those greetings. That'd be a great follow-up to those, I think that's fantastic, great spread.
So moving on to general business. Any just general business?
Just Charlie, I just, with the postponement of the Mayor's Summit, whatever it is, Community Summit. Yeah, that's now got a new date picked and there, so we're going again in Blackwater in June. Yeah, so all that's being worked through.
Can you remember the date? June
6th.
June 6th.
Pretty close, I think.
No, that's not the date.
It's not.
It was 10th.
It is the 10th of June.
10th.
Saturday, the 10th of June.
It's close.
There is a budget workshop on the 6th, though.
Blackwater's
Not to be confused with that.
Okay, no further business? Meeting closed.
Thank you, Mr Chair. 11:01.
Thanks, Charlie.
And my apologies for jumping around.
It's all right. Life is that first time.
Good stuff, done.
It's done.
You wait for me, wait you?
Holding on to this stuff before you go there.
Yeah, exactly.